Good morning everyone, my name is Michelle. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. It's Wednesday morning, the 13th of March, and we are concentrating on the Delphi case today. So I was live for a little over 2 hours last night, my time. I'm going to focus on one specific area of a large document that I read last night. There was a huge document dump yesterday, lots of documents, but it's the motion to compel I'm talking about here. So if you want to hear me reading and commenting on the whole thing, go and check out that live stream. I want to concentrate today on the geofencing information. It's potentially the most exculpatory information that I've seen in this case to date. I was shocked, I was angry, and I was saddened all at one fell swoop. The world is still watching.
It's time for you guys to start being journalists.
Before an angry Andrew Baldwin left the courthouse, 13 News overheard him speaking to Richard Allen's wife, saying, "It ain't over. The world's watching. The world sees what's going on."
First, before we get into that document, let's just describe a little of how geofencing works. Companies or law enforcement are able, via geofencing, to draw an imaginary boundary on a digital map, and then all the cell phone location data within that boundary can be collected and it can be tracked. Used a lot in marketing so that, they can hone in on selling somebody something in the geographical area of interest. But when it comes to law enforcement, this technology is extremely useful to cops. So they're doing exactly the same thing as companies do, creating an area and tracking all the cell phone data in that area. The data is provided to the cops anonymously, who then create a list of suspects based on their cell phone movements, and that's exactly what was done with all the cell phones in the immediate vicinity of the crime scene. This is the motion to compel and request for sanctions. So this is written by Andrew Baldwin and Brad Rosie. It's Andrew Baldwin that signed the document on behalf of Richard Allen. So we want to go down to point 30. That's where the area of particular interest for the purposes of this video is. The geofencing evidence was received nearly 10 months after the state was required to turn it over, and contained what appeared to be highly exculpatory evidence concerning a variety of important matters, including the phone numbers of multiple people who appear to have either been at the crime scene or within 60 to 100 yards of the crime scene during the very times when the victims were purportedly being murdered, according to the state's timeline provided in the probable cause affidavit. So what do we know about the timeline? We know from the video on Libby's phone, of which we've seen, 2 or 3 seconds of, and those immortal words, "guys down the hill," that was taken allegedly at 2:13 p.m. And we know that BG directed the girls down the hill, and then a day later, just under 24 hours later, they were found in a location on the north side of Deer Creek. The crime scene coordinates in the Ron Logan search warrant I've included on this map. So this is the Ron Logan search warrant, which gives us a little bit of information about the crime scene. And yes, it's got a murder sheet written all over it because they, quote unquote, got a leaked piece of information. All right, okay. This is the latitude and longitude. So I've plotted in the latitude and longitude written here. When people show videos of themselves being at the crime scene, it looks a little further down to the immediate southeast of those coordinates, where people tend to kind of focus around the crime scene area. But I'm going to do measurements from both of those locations, and you will see that 60 to 100 yards is next to nothing. But let's read a little bit more before we do that. In this late discovery, the defence found a map prepared by someone, presumably someone from law enforcement. Did it not have their name on it? Did it not have an accompanying cover page? List of notes as to how that map was developed? You would think that there would be information as to how that map was derived. You would think. I don't know. You think at least it would have an officer's name on it. Then, the author of the map. You would think at the very, very least there would be that. Anyhow, appears to track movements of the people in and around the crime scene on the afternoon of February 13th, 2017. So that's a mistake. Including between 3:02 p.m. and 3:27 p.m. at or very near the location within 60 to 100 yards of where the bodies were ultimately found the following day. So there's no explanation as to why the defence has chosen 3:02 and 3:27, that very specific time frame, because if you read further down, the movements of certain phones in and around that crime scene were tracked between 12:39 and 54 seconds p.m. and 5:49 and 6 seconds p.m. So that's very precise as well. So what I want to know is why the map, the geofencing map, was studied between 12:39 and 54 seconds. That's so precise. Why not say 12:40? Why those times? But then why did the defence focus in on those times? Is there some other part of the discovery that we haven't seen that says law enforcement believe the girls were murdered between 3:02 and 3:27? Is there a specific reason? Or is that specific to any potential inculpatory evidence that might implicate Richard Allen? So the defence want to move away from that information. Like, for example, if Richard Allen's phone, and we definitely know that they had Richard Allen's phone number in February 2017, because remember, Richard Allen went forward to speak to Dan Dullard, who didn't record the conversation, or at least he said he did. He recorded all conversations, but he couldn't find that one. For whatever reason, just couldn't find that one. All right. But he did get Richard Allen's phone number. We know he saw Richard Allen's phone, the one he had at the time of the murders. So my question is, was Richard Allen there any time between 12:39 and 54 seconds and 5:49 and 6 seconds? Was his phone recorded anywhere? We know he was using his phone, that he was on his phone watching a stock ticker. His phone was in use, or at least he said his phone was in use. So was Richard Allen's phone caught in this geofenced area? We don't know how big the geofenced area is. Did they just do it 60 to 100 yards from the crime scene? That's very precise. Or did they do the whole area, like encompassing the bridge, the road? How big is that geofenced area? We don't know the answer to that. All right, so was Richard Allen recorded anywhere in this time frame? In 2017, law enforcement claim, although there's no way to prove it because the conversation wasn't recorded, that Richard Allen was in that area between 1:30 and 3:30, the precise time of the murders. Cassie, Libby's sister, dropped them off at Mia's farm at 1:49. And then, of course, they were on the bridge, definitely at 2:13, because of the BG video. And then, in the PCA, they say that Sarah Carbo saw a muddy and bloody man, although he wasn't bloody, he was just muddy, wearing a tan coat, not a blue one. However, that's in the PCA, and they're attributing that to be Richard Allen, 3:57, walking west along County Road North. So at any time between 1:30 and 3:57, was Richard Allen recorded in this geofenced area? In 2022, Richard Allen said he was there at the trails between about 12 and 1:30. left about 1:30. So if Richard Allen's phone wasn't at any point in this time frame, in that geofenced area, it means either that he was telling the truth in 2022 and probably telling the truth in 2017, and they've just changed what Richard Allen said to match, their own ends, like they've done with the Muddy and Bloody Man, wearing the blue coat rather than the tan coat, and not bloody but just a bit muddy. So it could be anybody, like a farm worker, anybody, right? So if Richard Allen had already left, he can't possibly be Bridge Guy, and he can't possibly be the guy that kidnapped and murdered Abby and Libby. So there's that, or Richard Allen could have turned his phone off. So my question is Richard Allen's phone recorded at any time in that geofenced area? It would be highly suspicious if it was, and then it suddenly lost the signal, like it could have lost battery, I guess, or it's turned off. So once, Richard Allen, the killer, got the idea in his head that he was going to murder these girls, he turned his phone off. That would be suspicious if his signal just disappeared from the map. I do want to know why the defence has specified 302 and 327. The prosecution, however, when asked about, reports connected to this geofencing map, say that no reports exist. But they've said that before. They've said that before and they've lied. They've suddenly produced a report or notes. The defence has heard this type of answer from the prosecution in the past. Yes, absolutely they have. Within the last 2 weeks, the defence deposed the state's phone dump expert, who presumably will be testifying concerning the data found on Libby German's phone. Before that deposition, the defence had emailed the prosecution on February 26, 2024, seeking reports related to the phone dump of that particular phone so that they could prepare for the deposition. They responded, the prosecution that is, claiming that there's no reports. Then, right at the time, minutes before that particular deposition began, the prosecutor, Slicky Nicky McClelland, who's becoming more tricky than Slicky as time goes on, handed over 2 to 3 pages of notes that the state's phone dump expert had made, providing the defence zero time to review or to consult their own experts. He handed over those notes without any explanation and with no apparent reasons as to why, when previously asked, he told the defence that no such document exists. Oh, he just found it down the side of his sofa. Thought the hamster had eaten it, but no, found it down the side of his sofa. So you can understand why the defence are suspicious that actually reports and notes do exist that concern that geofencing map. Therefore, concerning the lack of candour regarding the existence or non-existence of certain evidence, the defence cannot be sure whether certain documents exist concerning the geofencing analysis. They don't know. Is this going to be another set of notes or reports that Slicky Nicky, with his dirty trickies, hands the defence at the trial minutes before the defence are going to cross-examine a geofencing expert and doesn't give them time to get their own expert? Since rejoining the case, the defence has sought out the names of the geofencing experts who analysed the geofencing evidence for purposes of preparing for depositions to determine if the state's expert has an explanation as to why the geofencing evidence displays what appears to be extremely exculpatory evidence of people walking in or around the crime scene during times when law enforcement is claiming that the murders were taking place. At first, the prosecutor refused to provide the names of these experts, then told the defence he would ask his investigator. And then this is the thing that angered me, shocked me, and saddened me all in one fell swoop. Point 38. Again, specifically, someone prepared a map which tracked the February 13th, 2017 afternoon movements of multiple phones in or around the place where the victims were ultimately found the following day. Particularly, some of these movements appeared to have occurred between 3:02 and 3:27, either at the scene where the victims were ultimately found or within 60 to 100 yards of that site. None of those phones or people associated with those phones have any affiliation with Richard Allen. That's highly exculpatory, but it's very specific between 3:02 and 3:27. I say again, was Richard Allen's phone recorded at any time from the 12:39 and 54 seconds onwards? Was it recorded at any time? And if it did, what time did it leave the scene? Because it still gives scope for Richard Allen to have kidnapped the girls and then left the scene and someone else murdered them. So it's important to know whether Richard Allen's phone was recorded at any time from 12:39 and 54 seconds, but before 3:02. What the defence has honed in on here is 3:02 and 3:27, which again is very specific. I want to know why that specific time was used. I'm trying to be fair here. To me, this seems highly exculpatory, but I want clarification. So just to remind you again, Libby took the BG video at 2:13 on the southern side of the bridge. The bridge goes all the way from here down here. And then there's a path, which is private land this. So he says, guys down the hill, they go down the hill and then to the crime scene. So what does 60 to 100 yards look like? I'll do it both from the coordinates and from this general area. So from this general area here, where the girls may have been taken through the shallow part of this creek, doing yards, 60 yards is from that spot. Now remember, this is not absolutely precise. So that's 60 yards. What's 100 yards? 100 yards would take you onto this private land. Going the other way, it would take you up the hill. It wouldn't reach the cemetery, it wouldn't reach Ron Logan's house, it certainly wouldn't reach the road. If you just look at how far away the road is, you know, you're looking at the cemetery being, from that spot, you're looking at the cemetery being like 350 yards, and then the road close to 500 yards, just approximately 430, okay, on a straight northerly path. And the bridge from that area, from where roughly the end of the bridge, you're looking at about 215 yards, something like that, 210 yards from that area. So 100 yards would take you onto this private land on the other side of the creek, or it would take you into the woods on either side. You'd still be in the woods at 100 yards. So the defence are saying that there were people within 100 yards of that crime scene where the girls were found on the 14th of February 2017, between 3:02 and 3:27, and none of those phone numbers were associated with Richard Allen. So where was Richard Allen? When did he leave? If we do it from the coordinates, the precise coordinates in the Ron Logan search warrant, if we do it all again, then it would get you to the other side of the creek. It wouldn't get you to the bridge, and it would get you in the woods, going up the hill. Nowhere close to the cemetery, but still in the woods. Go this way, it would put you in the creek, or in the woods on the other side. But not close to this private land, not close to the cemetery, not close to the road, not close to Ron Logan's house. So who are these people? How many were there? Were there people belonging to those phones ever interviewed? No, not according to this defence document. No one was interviewed. This is shocking, maddening. It just makes me absolutely gutted for Richard Allen. It really does. And in my opinion, it's the most exculpatory information that we've received to date. But I've got questions. I do have questions. Why 3:02 to 3:27 precisely? I want to know how many phones. I want to know who those phones belong to. But for now, what we do know is that Richard Allen was not in this area, this precise area within 100 yards of the crime scene, between 3:02 and 3:27. If Richard Allen did the murders, then he would have had to do them and leave the scene before 3:02. So it cuts down the murdering time and putting all the sticks on and stuff to be, 45, 48 minutes, rather than close to 3:57 when he was seen on the road, allegedly, according to the PCA. But I would argue that that person that Sarah Carbo saw wasn't Richard Allen at all. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.